So here we are. We've just spent the last several Sundays in Lent with Jesus making his way to Jerusalem. Today's an unusual Sunday. It's Palm Sunday. We're still in Lent, but it marks the beginning of Holy Week, a week that has some of our most sacred events of our faith. It's an unusual Sunday because you're not going to get out at the usual time, and it's not because I would have preached too long. I promise you that. The things that we experience this coming week is going from Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, celebrating his Last Supper with his disciples, experiencing his betrayal, his passion, torture, his murder, and finishing with his dying on the cross. It's a busy week. And you got a taste of that during that second gospel reading. I read it faster than I would have, and I shortened it because we're going to be doing that on Good Friday. Did I mention that today's an unusual Sunday? It's unusual because the liturgy itself is different and longer. It's a Sunday that bridges two seasons in Churchland, Lent, and Easter. Today we have joyful cries of Hosanna, which translates to one of three things. I pray, please save us, or save now. It's often used as a shout of joy, but it also can be a strong plea for deliverance. So how do we get there? From today's cry of Hosanna and waving of palms to cries of crucify him on Friday. We can't fully understand that without experiencing Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday before we gather back here next Sunday. So, spoiler alert, Jesus is killed. But, and whenever you hear but, it negates everything that you just heard. But, God of love, our God of love, raises him from the dead, and we celebrate his resurrection. I invite you to come and experience the fullness of this week. The fullness of God's passion for us by coming to the Maundy, Thursday service and the Good Friday service. I assure you that it can be the most remarkable experience if you're open to having it be. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get back to today where Jesus starts the last portion of his trip to get to Jerusalem. He starts today in Bethpage, a village on top of the Mount of Olives that's roughly, thanks to Dr. Google, 1 kilometer away from the city gates. Now, I had the privilege to go to the Land of the Holy One a few years ago, and we did a pilgrimage of Holy Week during our pilgrimage. And we walked down the side of the Kedron Valley from the Mount of Olives, down past the Garden of Gethsemane. It's a steep hill. It's a very steep hill. It was awkward doing it with pavement. I can't imagine doing it on a rocky road or a dirt road as Jesus would have been riding his donkey. In the Kedron Valley, when we think of valleys here, especially in the Ottawa Valley, we can't even see where the valley begins and ends. It's so big. There, the valley is like this. Very steep on both sides and very narrow. So he would have taken the better part of maybe an hour to do this walk. 2 hours if there was a huge crowd. Imagine Jesus' parade with cries of "Save us" in the air, coming through one of the gates of the city, while on the same day, and perhaps even at the same time, Pilate was entering through another gate. Pilate paraded into Jerusalem with all the pomp of state power. He showed Rome's military might and that was a threat to the people of Jerusalem. It was used basically to ensure Rome's peace by the sword, Pax Romana, in a city that quadrupled in size during Passover. It would have gone from 50,000 people to $200,000. 200,000 people. Now that would be a crowded city, wouldn't it? In an ancient world, it would have been noticed. A king arriving on a war horse came ready for battle. A king on a donkey came in peace. So by contrast to the Roman entry, Jesus' entry was anti-imperial, anti-power. It was a counter-procession of peasants that were his followers, that proclaimed an alternate way of being, that for 3 years Jesus called the kingdom of God. His disciples would have been proclaiming the hosannas, and the crowds in the city would be saying, "Who is this guy?" I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that Jesus coming into Jerusalem the way he did poked the bear sufficiently enough that it added a little bit of incentive to have him crucified. Jesus was no fool. He knew exactly what he was doing. He refused to play by the rules of power, and it cost him his life. For those of us who struggle to reconcile the role of God's will in the death of Jesus, let's be clear. Yes, God, did Jesus declare the coming of God's kingdom? Not that he died. That was the doing of human beings. What Jesus was protesting was the marginalization of people, economic exploitation where the rich take advantage of the poor, and legitimization of the structures that say, don't try and change things. Is it just me, or does that sound very familiar? What Jesus offered during his 3-year ministry, and to us here today, is God's kingdom as an alternative. A kingdom of peace and justice, radical equality, and universal freedom. So how did we get from the donkey to the cross? Lots of factors got us there. Not just one or two. It's easy to point at Judas. Do you remember him? If you come on Thursday, you'll hear about him. Or Peter, or Pilate. It's easy to point to the power of Rome, or Jewish people themselves, or the crowds, Jewish authorities. But there's no room for blame. There's no room in Jesus for anti-Semitism. I cannot state this clearly enough. The cross is not the result of one betrayal or failure. It comes out of a series of human failings. Power, greed, oppression, control, violence, and we can't forget about fear. All of these things played a part. By the way, there is no hope in the way of human power, no possible victory if we try to use our power to defeat evil through violence. To borrow from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Jesus is not entering into Jerusalem to take power as we understand it. He's entering to redefine it. Power in his kingdom is not about control. It's about presence, journeying alongside of us, truth, forgiveness. It's about love. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of a journey that will take us through misunderstanding, conflict, loss, betrayal, and ultimately to the cross. God does not arrive through force. God comes gently, persistently, without coercion. God does not overwhelm us with love, but invites us into it. So here's a question. Do we want a kind of king who does not dominate, but walks alongside? A king who does not avoid suffering, but enters into it? A king who shows us that love is not always powerful in the way the world understands power, but is powerful in a deeper way. So this week, I have 2 invitations for you. Oh, good, he's inviting. That means he's close to the end. I have 2 invitations for you. First, I invite you to attend Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, and to enter into Jesus' journey through to next Sunday. Second invitation. I invite you to reflect on God's kingdom and pay attention to the world that we live in and contrast the two during your week.